This is the growth strategist, Ambler. And this is part 2 in my series of vlogs on what are the roles of your CFO in strategic planning. And I've helped over 800 companies grow. And I have had the pleasure of working with some really fabulous CFOs. And I have noticed that there's a pattern of the ones that represent a true competitive advantage for a company. They seem to be very open-minded, they're constructive and instructive. They're not wet blankets. Now, let me give you some examples, but I want to frame it for a second. You know, not every company is the same, and so in my opinion, strategic planning needs to be tailored to the individual company and its situation. And the same is true related to the CFO's role. They don't automatically need to do the same thing in strategic planning. It depends on how you structure it, what you need from them. So, I can give you an example. It's fun when the strategic planner or the CEO aren't the only ones that are posing questions about expansion. It's cool when a CFO is also able to ask, I wonder if we should think about an acquisition. Maybe we're going to need private investment money coming in. I wonder if we should look at an IPO. Should we be looking at franchising because we've got a method? I wonder if geographic expansion is what we've got to talk about. Or if they say something like, we've had a stubborn plateau, and I wonder if we could do something more effectively. Maybe if we could penetrate a different market. Maybe we need to develop some exciting products. I wonder how. Maybe there's a way we can pick up speed. And if they say it in the way that is posing a question, not criticizing anybody for not having done it, but looking at opportunities and options, it can help a lot. The thing is, the feasibility about can you or can't you do the strategy, or figuring out the optimum pacing for it, that can come later. Your CFO can help figure that out. But what is it? What is the strategy you're going to be doing the feasibility study about? So one role they can play is at optimizing, considering the options, looking at possible strategies, expansive thinker, that some of them are not invited to do. But if they can, gosh, let them do it. So, you know, recently we were helping a client with their strategic planning in a different way. Okay, we needed to bring in an interim CFO for them. And in their case, we were using what we call a synthesis approach to strategic planning. And that's where there's a parallel process of team building that's going on. Because, you know, they had some what I'll call behavioral symptoms. Things like, you know, silo behavior, passive-aggressive communication, avoidance, blaming, that kind of stuff. We've all seen it in our life, and it's very destructive. And the thing is that the controller was a in-law in this family-owned business, and they were part of the issue, part of the problem of continuing the dysfunctional behavior. So strategic planning wasn't going to get very far if we didn't have somebody that could help objectively look at the data. So they had an interim CFO, and it helped a lot. That company benefited from this interim CFO's objective questions, the capacity to just imagine success, and the expansive thinking. It wasn't, it was fun not to be the only person that was talking about, leveraging strengths and imagining success. I felt bad for some of the other people who were really good in the business, and, it's gotten to the point where the naysayers are winning. Personally, I don't think it's surprising that the majority of the companies in the Inc. 500 have CEOs that say they have CFOs that are optimizers. They think of ways to find more money. They look for ways to squeeze cash flow. They understand things like currency rates, and they've developed strong relationships with external resources. I've even noticed that on my program. Several of you know that I'm a host of a peer-to-peer talk show every week. It's now syndicated. It's great. I love it. It's with the CFOs of companies between 20 and 200 million. And I have noticed that my guests have often said, and they brag, they don't just say it, they're bragging about how bright and how visionary their CFOs are. Wow. You know, recently we were doing another type of approach to strategic planning. We were doing what we call a catalytic approach, where you're doing some focused problem solving parallel to strategic planning. In their case, it was a company that had really been tolerating kind of low gross profitability for a significant line of business. And you know, it was really neat. The CFO played a role in the success of both the problem solving and the strategic planning. She dove right in there and she captured the information to help the department heads and the account managers look at what's behind the reduced gross profit. You know, if you made the assumption that just because, you know, getting information and doing reports is kind of a part of the CFO's role, that every CFO would have dug in and risen to the occasion the way she did, if you think that's everybody, you'd be mistaken. It was really impressive to see somebody just kick in and give enough data that they could change what was going on. On another kind of thought, there's been great progress, but unfortunately, not every CFO out there is fabulous and optimizing and open-minded. It's really still not the norm. Too often CFOs are playing the role of naysayers, especially during strategic planning. Now I understand it. I mean, some of it's because there's this long protracted tail of uncertainty, as they call it, following the last recession. And sometimes it's because they've been put in the role of being the wet blanket, playing the bad guy. I try to be a positive force of economic development. And to me, you know, when there's a wet blanket in the middle of a session on strategic planning and it stifles communication, it doesn't help anybody. So just picture this. I mean, when the marketing VP starts to talk about possible new products or expanding the markets, and the CFO is the first person to say why the company shouldn't even be considering it, it stifles communication. Or the CIO is starting to make the observation that the company had better go to the cloud to reduce the downtime and be able to serve the clients better. And the CFO wet blanket says, that's going to cost too much, we can't talk like that. Where's that company going? And if the VP of sales starts sharing information about how the competitors are landing some bigger accounts, and the CFO is the one that speaks up first to talk about our cost of acquisition of clients is already too high, how motivated is that sales department going to be? Or if the negative CFO, you know, becomes condescending when the HR director starts talking about compensation formulas or benefit packages, whoa. Now, let me give you some observations. I'm bringing this up for a reason. I've noticed that the CFOs in the world that have gotten into that negative, you know, mentality, I've seen 4 things that have really pushed it into being a dominant behavior. Usually their pessimism has followed what I see as that they're really controllers. They were never trained, they were never educated, they were never helped to think strategically, and so you put them in strategic planning and they're kind of over their head. That's one cause. Another is that maybe they are strategic in their thinking and they are real CFOs, and the people on the team, particularly the CEO, has ignored their informed advice so often that they're just frustrated. And so now they're coming out negative, saying, no, you can't, because they don't feel like they've been heard. A third cause is that maybe they're overburdened with reports and details and numbers, and they're in the weeds, as they call it. And they're so preoccupied with the minutiae that they can't lift their head up and think strategically and help. That costs you money, not having enough help for the CFOs so that they can think and help you make strategic decisions is an expensive error, in my opinion. And the final cause, and it's kind of sound like the same as the other 3, is when the CEO-CFO relationship has been one where the CEO is pushing the CFO into the bad guy role. To me, you know, a company clearly increases its growth potential if those causes of negativity for the CFO get addressed and hopefully resolved before real strategic planning comes around again. You know, a real open-minded, constructive, instructive, visionary CFO is a competitive advantage for a company. Is your CFO a competitive weapon for your company? This is the growth strategist, Ambler, with your tip of the week.